I don't like your
knife.
It sucks.
Hey everybody, Corey here coming at you with another knife review. That was really energetic, I'm sorry. Today we have a review of the Reeve Umnumzaan. And the lighting is horrible because I actually just filmed the review like seamlessly face to face instead of doing a top down. So as always, I'm going to give you a brief summary of how I feel about the knife, and then I'm going to get into the tabletop review portion of it. So it's going to be a little different this time. I would urge you to go look at my large Sebenza review and watch like the first 8 minutes or whatever it is, where I basically give you a summary about how I feel about the large Sebenza. Almost everything that I have to say about the large Sebenza applies to the Umnumzaan. As for the differences, I'm going to go over those in the tabletop portion of this review. Here's the general takeaway of how I feel about the Umnumzaan. It is different than the Sebenza. They clearly set out to make a different knife than the Sebenza. And while I do think there are some improvements as compared to the Sebenza, I think the bad outweighs the good in terms of what they tried to do. As a matter of fact, I don't know what they tried to do with some of the complaints that I have. Like I said, some of the changes are really good. I would almost like to see a hybrid of like an Umnumzaan and a Sebenza at some point in time, because a few steps they took in a good direction and a few steps they took in a direction so badly, in my opinion, that I literally can't understand what they were trying to do. We'll talk about that in the top-down portion of the review, but I hope you guys enjoy this. Stick around. Like I said, go check out the summary of the Sebenza. Everything that I have to say about the Sebenza stands for this knife. I'm going to talk about the differences coming up, and I'm going to hit you with the specs and the size comparisons as well. So stick around. Love you guys. Yeah, stick around. Love you guys. Alright guys, so as always, let's start this video with some size comparisons. Here it is next to my conventionally large knife, the Off-Grid Knives Scorpion. And here it is next to my conventionally small knife, the Ontario Knives Rat 2. If I stack these up butt to butt, you can see it's basically the same as the Scorpion, and you can see that it's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches longer than the Rat 2. I would call this a relatively large knife. I would say it's maybe, for some people, it might be on the large end of a mid-sized knife, but you know, it's big-ish. I'll put the specs up after this. Before we do that, let's look at some other size comparisons of some other knives that you might be familiar with. Here it is against the ProTech Malibu, and we'll do these one by one right now. So again, you can see bigger than a ProTech Malibu. And here it is next to a Spyderco Smock. I know, it's crazy to see a Spyderco on my table. Just a little bit bigger than the Smock. And then finally, for you Reeve knife guys, oh boy, I'm showing my bias here, but it makes me realize how much I actually like the Sebenza versus the Umnumzaan. Here it is next to the Sebenza, a little bit bigger than the Sebenza. All right, we're gonna put these specs up on the screen in just a second. Okay, so let's start with the 3 things that I think this knife does well and the 3 things that I think this knife could improve upon. So the first one's I'll just admit it, it's kind of a cop-out. I think I have to say it with every single Reeve. The fit and finish, the quality, the tolerances, it's a Reeve. It's great in that regard. You're never gonna have to think about, you know, is this knife gonna fail me? Am I gonna have to worry about, you know, the performance, blah, 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 anything like that. So in that regard, you know, it's a Reeve, it's great. I'm not gonna beat that horse to death. I already talked about it in my large Sebenza review. The second thing that I do wanna talk about on this knife, let's take a look at that tip. Check out that bevel. Check out that bevel on the back of the spine towards the tip. Now, for those of you wondering, it is sharp-ish. Let's see if we can, let me do this real quick. Oh yeah, no questions asked. So it's not paper cutting sharp. You can see it's capable of, you know, getting some nail off there. It is not paper cutting sharp. However, it can be utilitarian. It can be utilized. And what I've actually seen arguments for, let's get my hand out of the way. There we go. What I've actually seen arguments for with this tip is people say, well, what you can do if you're opening packages and you don't want to gunk up your knife, you can actually start the cut and flip it around and use the back of the spine, the sharpened, well, I don't want to say sharpened, the beveled portion of the back of the spine to actually open your package. And then that way, all the stuff that would normally gunk up your blade, it just kind of gunks up the spine, and then you can clean that afterwards or whatever the case might be. And you can keep the edge nice for whatever cutting tasks you actually need to use the edge for. So it's an interesting blade shape. It adds an aesthetic twist on the knife, but it also adds a functional twist on the knife that I've never seen on another knife. I'm sure they're out there. I've seen harpoon blades before, but I've never seen a bevel quite so fine on the spine of a knife. And I think it could actually arguably be used in a functional manner to some degree. Finally, let's get the large Sebenza out. Yes, I know it's off the screen because it's not what I want centered. Let's take a look at the handle of the large Sebenza, right? You've seen this before, you've seen it in my review, you've seen it all before, right? That's the Sebenza handle. Taking a look at the Umnumzaan, you can see we've got these hump, or rather, I guess there's the one hump, whatever. It's basically just a little bit more ergonomic from a handling perspective. That hump right there in the middle sits perfectly between my middle finger and my ring finger. It actually makes the Umnumzaan feel comfortable as opposed to the large Sebenza, which in my opinion, it's just fine. It's not bad, but it's not great. Like, it's just fine. So in that regard, I think the Umnumzaan has improved upon the Sebenza, because they've done what I really wanted them to do, which was just, even though it's a relatively straight handle, they've added these humps to it, or this hump to it, the scalloping, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's not quite contoured, but the shape of the knife is such that it's actually a little bit more ergonomic than the large Sebenza. So I do like that. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about on this knife that drives me crazy, the lock bar. And it's easier to show it from this side. What the hell? What the hell? Look at this thing. Look at how proud it is. Look at this hump right here between my two fingers. Look at that hump that it comes to right there. When I grab this knife, let's do it like this. Look at where that hump is when I want to grab this knife. This is the most natural way. I'm just going to hold it as naturally as I can. Look at that hump. Look at where that hump is. It just digs into my finger, and it doesn't matter. The only way that I can get it to be remotely comfortable is if I choke up on the knife to a point where it's just uncomfortable to hold it like this, and I can maybe kind of squeeze that hump between my index finger and my middle finger. This is what I was talking about when I said, they made some changes, but they just confuse me. There is nothing about this. Just quickly looking at this knife, there is nothing about this that even remotely looks comfortable. As a matter of fact, it would look comfortable if it was just completely tucked away, or it just didn't come to this point. It's so confusing to me. And it's one of the things that make this knife feel like it was designed by someone else who was allowed to put a Chris Reeve logo on it, because it seems so wrong to me. The other thing I want to talk about, these thumb studs, okay? Now, if you watched my video on the large Sebenza, I'm not big on the large Sebenza thumb studs, but I tell you what, boy, I can get at them. And I mean, gosh, the Umnumzaan makes me enjoy my large Sebenza. That's how different the Umnumzaan is. I can sit here and do this all day. Now, it's not necessarily comfortable. I talked about that in my video, but I can get at those thumb studs any way I need to. Well, there's a failure, but you know what? I can get at those thumb studs when I need to. What's going on here? I mean, the top of this, the design of the top, it's like a semi-sphere, right? And it's completely smooth, right? It's completely polished. It's like a dome. You can't do anything productive using the top of this thumb stud. You have to approach it from underneath with this O-ring, right? And even if you want to slow roll it, you've really got to bury your thumb in there. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand the shape. I don't understand the design. I don't understand why the top is smooth. I don't understand why there has to be an O-ring on this. I don't understand why you would add an O-ring to be like a fundamental place to grip the knife. It's like it feels like this thumb stud is a solution to a problem that nobody had. I just don't understand what's going on here. And yes, this one is acting as like an external stop pin, right? That's how it sits here. And that's fine. If that's something you want to do, if you want to design something that acts like an external stop pin, then go ahead and do it. But if it's the only way to deploy the knife, why did you make it so inaccessible? Why'd you make it so hard to get to? Why do you make it so that I basically have to flick the knife because slow rolling it is such a pain? I don't understand. I don't get it. And again, this is one of those things that makes me kind of scratch my head, and I'm like, did Chris Reeve really do this? Did he really put his seal of approval on this? And then finally, the third thing that just drives me wild, we're going to go back to the lock bar for a second. Not only, right, what was the first problem? The lock bar stands so proud, it comes to such a fine edge right there. It comes to such a fine edge, and it comes to a hump right here, so that when you're grabbing the knife, it just doesn't feel good. Not only that, they scalloped out the inside right there, probably just so you could, I guess, get a better grip on it when you're trying to close it. However, look at this. You thought this was thin? Look at this. I don't think I can get any close to my camera. Look at how thin that is. That is so uncomfortable on your finger. This is so sharp. It digs into my finger so much. And to compound on top of that, the lock bar tension on this knife is very high. So not only is it just kind of uncomfortable inherently by the shape, by the design, they also made it so that in order to really get at it, oh my God, the tension. It's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. It's so confusing to me. I don't understand. The Umnumzaan made me appreciate my Sebenza like it was nobody's business. Now, it's interesting to me. Somebody, please, in the comments, somebody who loves their Umnumzaan, talk to me here. Talk to me about this, because I think the thumb studs are just a downgrade from the Sebenzas, which already aren't that amazing. I don't see any world where this lock bar is not uncomfortable for someone when the knife is being used, and I don't see any world where that lock bar is not uncomfortable for someone when they're trying to disengage the knife. I don't understand what was going on there. The unique blade shape, I love it. It's cool, it's different, I like it. The sharpened bevel, the backside of the spine, I love it. It's interesting. The texturing on the handle, it's great. It really adds a bunch of traction. The shaping of the handle compared to a Sebenza, it's great. But man, between the lock bar and the thumb stud, I am left with a terrible taste in my mouth anytime I have to actuate the action. Anytime I want to open this knife and anytime I want to close this knife, I am highly dissatisfied. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that this counts as a glass breaker, because maybe 1 out of every 10,000 people in their entire lives are ever going to need to actually use a glass breaker. So whatever, you get a glass breaker too. I'm not going to fault it for that. It is what it is. When it comes to the lock bar and the thumb studs, I don't understand. And they are actually so poorly executed, in my opinion, that they are enough to deter me from this knife entirely. This is actually a loaner. I was thinking about buying one, and I knew someone who was willing to lend one to me. I gotta be honest. This one, my Sebenza, I might hold on to it over the years. This thing, I am so happy that I did not spend my own money on this knife. Tyler, I love you to death. I'm so sorry. I know it's your knife. I hope you love it. I really do hope you love it. I can think of so many other places that I'd rather put $450, and they don't even necessarily involve pocket knives. I mean, this one really, wow. It kind of blew my mind in terms of the things that didn't work, in my opinion, because the things that work, they work, but the things that don't work, wow, they are rough, in my opinion. So, guys, that's what I have to say about the Umnumzaan. If you want a Chris Reeve, play it safe, man. Just get the large Sebenza and stay with what's tried and true. If you get the opportunity, handle an Umnumzaan. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. But I can tell you, everybody who loves the Umnumzaan, they're like goo goo gaga for it. Like they're head over heels. They even say, oh, it's way better than a Sebenza, blah, blah, blah. You might end up being one of those people. But man, for me, oh, this knife, it just made me want to stop carrying it immediately. I tried to carry this knife like 2 times before I was like, I just don't like this knife. I do not want this knife. So that's my take on the large Sebenza, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got a kick out of it, and I will see you guys next time.